Okay, my friends, I am about as excited as I have been in a very long time. This is Brian Forrester's most recent video, and it's called An Amazing New Documentary About Lost Ancient Civilizations from the producers of BAM. Now, what if we have been mistaken about our past? And we have. And I'll show you my evidence, and then let's see what Brian's video is about. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm seeing that he may be making a turn. I hope. We're going to find out in a minute. Okay, my friends, I've been in a battle about this for 10 years, and you know what they say? When you're in a battle, go right for the throat. Explain this. Somebody explain this. Nobody can. Not a single person. This, look at the size of this. This is a machine. This is the width of the machine's totality. Now, how did it get here? It didn't drive here. This is wet. Obviously it was wet however this thing got here, and it sunk into this wetness. Well, it didn't drive here because there's no tire tracks here or here. There's no tire tracks up here. Something brought this down and dropped it down from the sky. That's all I can come up with. You come up with something else, God bless you. Now, what is this? They were cutting slabs of this wet substance, whatever it happened to be, and I can tell you what it happened to be was the flesh and the tendons of the gods. Now, when I say of the gods, I don't necessarily mean this. These were the giants that were on the earth in those days. And there was other giants before that that were in the earth. These were the ones that got drowned. The other ones are part of the earth, it appears. I'm telling you, it's spectacular, absolutely. But to run away and hide is not the solution. All right, everybody knows about the fitted walls and these bumps, and nobody can understand what all this is about. Well, I can explain it to you very easily. Look at how clear these are, how nicely these blocks are, and they just fit in together like putty. Now, this is a different situation. Still the same putty-looking walls, only this time, look what's in the middle of this rock. You see that? That's a blow-up of this piece here. Now, what is this? That's blood and bone, because this was flesh of whatever the titans were or the giants, and that's a nasty-looking piece, and this is a nasty-looking piece. Up there, they used the good ones. They used a nice clear tendon. Hey, can you show me that? Yes, Roger, I can. All right, there is muscle, and there is tendon, and there is bone, and there is flesh, and so forth in your body. Well, the tendon is the clearest building material they could get. It's almost no blood in there, and it's just as nice and flat and smooth as can be. And these anchor with little balls, because everything has to be locked in, and then your muscles pull against these tendons. The tendons have tension, tendons, and the muscles pull against them. Now, so the tendons have to be anchored. Let me show you how they anchor, and let me show you what an injury is when you pull a tendon in your gut. All right, that's exactly what I just showed you. This is the tendon mat, and which is absolutely clear and flawlessly perfect. And then those straps come off, and the balls, which are all over the earth, anchor into the flesh or the muscle or the bone or whatever underneath. There's an anchor spot. This one's pulled out. Okay, so as I showed you, this is that clear tendon that's on the gut, and these are the straps that run down through a little hole, what they call a Chinese finger trap. You see them up here? And they go down and they poke through, and then there's a ball on the end. All tendons have balls, and there are bazillions of them in your body, and they're everywhere over the earth, which I will show you. And those balls are from tendons. This one is ripped out of its anchor spot. It's supposed to be here. This is an injury. Now, they broke off these little stumps and took these tendon mats and made the walls out of them. That's why they're so perfect. This is as clear can get. When you get into the muscle and where the bone areas are, you got some nasty stuff. And that's what I showed you rotting away, basically. Now, all of these ones that have this type of a structure, these are from tendons. I'm just sorry, that's exactly what they're from. Even though some of them are just gigantic, like Giant's Causeway and all over Iceland and all these areas, those are tendon fibers. And at the tips of all these fibers are balls. Let me show you. All right, this is exactly what we're looking at. These kind of balls, and every one of them has a strap that runs from them. See them? All the straps run to balls. They're on the tips of all of your tendons everywhere in your body. And you have tendons everywhere in your body because a tendon attaches to a muscle. You have muscles everywhere, all over your face, all over your fingers, your arms, your legs, everywhere, your stomach. So there's bazillions of balls. Let me show you what they look like on Earth. All right, if you know how to understand anatomy and physiology and so forth, underneath here is a basement layer of skin. This is what's called interstitium balls. Above that was the skin of the outside layer. It's eroded and turned it into mud and clay, and the balls are still loaded in here. Let me show you how big these can get. All right. They discovered just recently, actually, in 2016, 2018, they announced this is a new organ system in the body. It's called interstitium. Well, what are we looking at here? We're looking at a layer of mucosa, they call that. And that's skin, or it's a layer that separates, it's a membrane. And below that membrane is all these fluid-filled bags and these black balls that hold springs to keep these fleshy areas open so that you can move around and you will come back. That's the anchors. Now, remember, this layer is the mucosa, skin, whatever, and below there is a red fleshy area with these balls and anchors that allow this to move and do all the things when you're alive. When you're dead, guess what happens? Those balls erode, as I showed you before, and sometimes they're very, very, very big. You see these balls? They're falling out of this wall here as it erodes. Just like I showed you that landscape where you had the mud. This is nothing more than the mud, the red bloody mud. And these are the balls that anchored the interstitium under the mucosa, or in this case I believe it's skin, a white-skinned creature. And that is absolutely enormous. And my friend Tyson Carlson out on the West Coast in Oregon, he has a site that's not much smaller than this. This is all over the earth. The earth, there was a statement made, I believe it was in the Bible, that said there were giants in the earth in those days. And then after that, there was more giants when the sons of God went into the daughters of men. And they had giants, and Enoch said they were miles tall. So I'm not going to argue. All right, here's Tyson's spot. There's one of those anchor balls right there, and there's the strap still attached to it. It's eroding away. He's on the coast, too. He's out in Oregon. And that's the same. These are the interstitium balls. He got a ton of stuff. Let me show you something else. I believe that's a bit of the intestine running through the gut. You know, and it looks like it's ready to have a nice, good poop come out of it. All right, again, this is from Tyson. This is the membrane. Now, not only that, this is the lower layer, only this layer right here of that membrane. Above this was this aqueous floppy layer, and then above that is another layer just like this, 6 feet or more above this layer. So this layer of membrane is from here to here is over 6 feet thick. These are the channels and so they let things in and out and so forth. They're absolutely astoundingly gigantic creatures. They burn pits in here and sit around and have fires in these things. Astoundingly gigantic creatures. Here's another one of Tyson's. That's a membrane. That separates 2 layers of tissue. It's a membrane. They even have these little tiny holes in them and so forth. You see this? Those are these little tiny holes. These are all the little blocky spots going up the membrane. And then there's some goop on this side and some goop on that side. That's what I just showed you from Tyson. Now, I just want to say something about Tyson. He bought a drone and everything to do this. He's doing this for no money. I don't think he has even advertising on his channel. And he's just a good guy trying to make a understanding of what we see. He was really thrilled to understand this, and very, you know, he was suppressed just like I am, just like everybody is that talks about this stuff because it's so spectacular. Somebody should be funding it. Somebody should say, look, we want honesty, we want truth. We don't want academia telling us that we can't believe what we see with our own eyes. Don't believe that. The guy's crazy. And that's exactly what they say. Not a single bit of interest there. And Brian knows this too. Brian Forrester's been up against academia too, and I don't think he's going to tell you. I've gone back and forth with Brian a few times, and I know what he's up against. Same thing I am. Same thing Tyson is. Same thing all of us are. Same Velikovsky, my hero. He was destroyed by academia, and this time it will not happen. I guarantee you of that. I wrote a book about Velikovsky. He was destroyed because of the minds of academics. I wrote this book 5 or 6 years ago called Mudfossils, Velikovsky, Minds in Collision. He wrote Worlds in Collision, which was an accumulation of the documented history throughout all of the cultures of the world. They had the same story of what happened. 3,500 years ago, the Earth was wrenched by almost an impact from Venus when it erupted as a fiery comet. Its atmosphere interacted with our atmosphere so violently that the sun stood still, they claim, and that the oceans boiled literally from the push to shove of the impact of the atmospheres. And there was extreme amounts of electrical activity, and the Earth almost incinerated. And this was, I believe, was the source of the Great Flood. And all of the mud fossils that I have are, I believe, as a result of that. And that was only 3,500 years ago. And so I wrote this book. I didn't want any money for it. So it says 0, but it's just talking about 99 cents over here. I don't know what that means. But let me just read to you what my introduction was here. The discovery of mud fossils a few years ago led on a journey that can only be described as wild and crazy. You're not kidding. The evidence uncovered is discussed in many links to the videos that prove the claims are made. And I had the DNA and CAT scans, all stuff at this time. Hundreds of samples were eventually completely scrutinized and many scientifically tested in a variety of ways. DNA tests were positive for human mitochondrial DNA. 3 tests and contamination was ruled out. All negative control tests were in fact negative for contamination. 7 CAT scans showed exquisite vascular and bone details in DNA-proven specimens. The same ones that I proved with the DNA were also CAT scan. One, I have 50-foot tall giant fingertip, and another DNA-verified fingertip was from a human giant, which, in my estimation, would be about 200 feet tall. You know, based on anatomically similar to us, and that's apparently what they were. In addition, there was lots of chemistry lab work. I also recreated the chemical process of mud fossilization in my little lab here. I'm being ignored when not attacked. In other words, they attacked me or ignored me. So I am being ignored when not attacked because reality is still not a concern in academia. And for at least 60 years, that's been the practice as done with Velikovsky's research. He is my hero, and the world will know about him 100%. That's why I wrote the book. I never told anybody about the book. I just wrote it, I put it up there, and now now is the time people should be looking into it. The mud fossil specimens I presented are physical support for Emanuel Velikovsky's historical masterpiece of 1950. This is 1950. That's 70 years ago. He wrote this, and people don't even know his name now. Velikovsky read, studied, and listened. That's the key. The stories were the same all over the globe, about the same events of the same dates observed by many and recorded by eyewitnesses at the same time. We dismiss these recorded historical documents as silly, scary stories, not at all rooted in reality. Well, they were. Scary stories, yes. Silly, no. Reality, absolutely. Velikovsky was literally attacked, and that will stop right now. Well, it didn't yet, but it will. The academic bullies and book burners are about to be exposed in these pages. Now the fun begins. I wish he was here now, my absolute hero, Emanuel Velikovsky. And his words will be revered throughout history. He was the one that did the research. You can't just make things up like this. He went around the world and he saw every historical document that was recorded, whether it was carved in stone or on papyrus or in clay or on walls or in paintings or in wherever it was. And they all had the same story. And now we're seeing that these stories were not rooted in mythical just nonsense. This actually literally happened. And I believe as this impact almost occurred. And they say it did occur to Mars, and that's what destroyed Mars completely. But with us, it like glanced off twice, and that's why they were so interested in celestial events, because it came back around, I guess, at least a couple of times, very close. But the first time was almost the end of the world. The second time was, I guess, not too good. I don't know. But these are things that need to be investigated. When I first originally read Velikovsky, I gave it, a pretty good read, and I felt like, the guy was onto something. He's looking at historical documentation, but it sounded so absurd that how could anybody really put a whole lot of faith in that, and the same thing in the Bible, and the same thing in the ancient texts, Hesiod and all those that are talking about the beginning and the theogony and the beginning of the earth and the creatures and all the dragons and monsters and all that. Well, we found them all. So this is not any mystery anymore. What now we have to do is start looking back. And I'm hoping that Brian is coming down that road now, because he's the guy he's like Velikovsky. He's gone out and done all the work. He's the guy that really is the guy on the street. Somebody has to put their feet on the street. Now, I'm a sort of a laid-back guy. I have all the stuff right on my own property. I don't have to go anywhere. I got it right here. It's right here on my property. I got 10 acres of 100% mud fossils. I mean, I have hundreds, literally hundreds and thousands of them, because all of the stone walls that are around my property, somebody way back when cleared up all these fields and made these stone walls. They're all over New England. And the stone walls are nothing but body parts. That's all they are. And I'm telling you, some of them are absolutely flawlessly unbelievable. I'll show you one quick one. Here, I'll show you a couple. This was the big, gigantic fingertip. That's the fingernail. That was DNA tested. And here's the fingerprints from it. Fingerprints. You see these little sweat pores? Those are the sweat pores. This is one finger ridge, one just like a ridge on your finger. It's the size of my thumb. Now, this peels right off too. I smacked that with a little sledgehammer and popped right off. And it's thick like this, and it was almost like it just peeled right off. And this is from the hand. And after I popped that off, I went up inside an artery and took the blood. And he said in the DNA reports, it was, well, here. In the DNA reports, it was excellent quality DNA. And here's the reports. And this goes back from 2015. And these are the three things I had tested. And down here, it goes through all the details. See right there. Excellent quality DNA sequences obtained for the gigantic tip and the lung. The finger, the hand, let me show you the hand. The hand was way into the mud phase. You see it, how red and muddy. It was almost completely replaced, but I did get up deep enough in to get some blood from an artery, and it came back, but it wasn't as dense as the excellent quality DNA. The other ones I took was virtually raw blood. I mean, literally. But you see this grip skin? The same thing here. You see the silvery stuff? It's peeling off. See it peeling off? That's because that's just another type of heavy-duty skin on your hands. And this is loaded with the tough, scrappy stuff. And I believe there's a ton of iridium in here, because there's an iridium layer that they found around the Earth after this event happened. And I believe it boiled the grip skins off of these giant creatures. And that's where that iridium layer settled in, because it's around the Earth as one layer. They thought it was from an impact of a comet. It was not. That comet is not, that was not an impact site. I looked at it. That is part of biology. And the Earth, you just saw what I showed you, the size of the things. You saw that wall of interstitium. I mean, the Earth is literally constructed of creatures. And even in space, the things in space coming through space, I'm telling you, they're body parts of gigantic creatures. This I cannot account for, but until we stop and look at it instead of running away from it, then we're just walking in circles. And that's what I've been screaming about to everybody. You're walking in circles, you're walking in circles, you're walking in circles. And they keep going around in circles. Now, I'm hoping that this is changing. Now, we're going to go see if Brian's circles are still circulating, because up until now, I haven't seen any real interest from anybody. I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody. And I know people that are in business and people that have to make a living, they will be assaulted and literally destroyed, just like Velikovsky, absolutely destroyed his life. They made him think he was on a #1 book, on the top seller book, on a whatever that #1 seller book thing is, and he was on the top of that for 11 weeks in a row, and the publisher was forced to take the book off the bookshelves. That's why I talk about book burners. They forced him. And I believe it was Doubleday. Someone told me the other day it was Doubleday that had originally been the publisher, and the academics told them if they didn't take that book down, they would never buy another book from them. So they took it down, and then they gave it to some comic book publisher or something. But he's still, everybody that really wanted reality was still reading it, but not the academics. You can even see over here. See these little blood vessels? That's where all blood goes up into the hand. And I have all kinds of fingers and knuckles and all kinds of things from this one. They're right in my backyard. So it's time to address this as a discussion. That's all. I'm not saying, yeah, the guy's right. Oh boy, good. Well, could be wrong, but I don't think so. I have too much evidence to just say, okay, yeah, you must be right. I'm stupid. No. I'm not going to go that route. I never have. I come with evidence. I don't come with just guesses. You see that's blood coming out of a rock. So don't tell me you can't get blood out of a rock. They flow all by themselves. Now that is a rock. However, it is also a bone head that's broken. And there's no real, what you would call bone left in here. It's been through the process of mud fossilization, which is nucleophilic substitution. That's where whatever was here originally has been substituted and stabilized primarily with transition metal reactivity, meaning that transition metals are in the middle of the periodic chart. They move things back and forth to the ones that have a lot of electrons to ones that want electrons, and they sort of mix them together until they get stable in the correct conditions, which is wet, mineral-rich waters and mud for long periods of time. That's blood comes out of them. And not only, and you say, well, it's just ferrous oxide. Well, guess what? Ferrous oxide does not have fibrin backing, which is scab. Scab, it's made its own scab. So I'm telling you, that's fiber, and plus I can show you the holes that the blood came out of. Here they are right there. There's the artery and there's the vein. The vein has the black blood, the artery has the red blood. And there's no guesses here. There's no guesses. All right, this is the kind of stuff I want to talk about, is the new species we've found. This is what we call notos. And I've got a ton of these. They're not just 1 or 2 or 10 or 100. Well, maybe not 100, but they're easy if they're all over the place. And this was the bone that went down in here. You can just barely make it out. Because this, again, nucleophilic substitution. Whatever was here was replaced. But this is where the bone cradle was. That's where the bone sat down in the back. And then that's where you see a little blood run out. That's where blood ran to and the toes are encased in here. They're not, it's not something where there's a shoe on here. That's the way they're designed. Now, this is a friend, Tish Egerton, has a ton of these, and they are new species, and I think mine has the same thing. I think mine has springs in here too. See how this has the little round wrapped up springs? I think I have the same thing in here. But hers are in a state of decay that are very easy to see, and we can see the actual strap coming off the heel bone, coming up to the saddle, where just like this saddle here, and this would have had a strap coming up too. Now this is where the tibia sits here and the fibia sits on the side, and it just falls off. All of them are like that. They fall off, see, just like that. Anyway, now I'm going to show you this close, but we have, and here's my goose, Caesar Augustus. There's his feathers. And again, nucleophilic substitution. If you could look and see, you'll find the neck and you find all of the things where bones should have been, but they're gone now because they have been replaced by that process I talked about. Now, what they are finding now, they're doing what they call concretion extractions. They're looking for bones. They can't live without the bones. Well, I have the entire head. They would chisel this down until they got to a point where it would change just a little bit. You could barely see the change, but they would get down to there, and then by using certain acids and salts, they can dissolve away fleshy things that would have normally been fleshy. They still retain a little bit of that chemistry. So if they use like vinegar, and I've seen a bunch of different ways that they're removing so that they can chisel it away and get to where the bone was. Because the bone is calcium primarily, and it's CaCO3 is tendons, and I mean there's all kinds of chemistry going on, but that's right there, if you can see it, that's the artery. All right, now you could get red blood out of there and test it. That could be tested, because these are inside. You just break that off or cut it. That's what I did. I drilled right inside of the ones I took, and I drilled right out of an artery. Very simple to do. And, you know, of course, you got to observe all the precautions. And this is the flat side because they all drowned like that. They flat primarily. Here's a hold on a second. All right, here's one of the other things I had DNA tests and CAT scans. So this was a lung, a human lung. And the DNA says it was human. And I drilled up inside there and got some red blood out of there. And again, flat as a pancake, drowned in the flood. Now, did the boiling waters, which Velikovsky talked about, is that why they stabilized much better? I think so, probably. Because if anything, you know, if you cook it a little bit, it sort of gets into, you know, drives off some of the really weak stuff out of there that is the rotting easy stuff, and it brings it more to a stabilized condition. But blood stays in forever. Blood almost never goes bad. I drilled right up in there. And this is totally red blood. If I put water on there, the blood would just almost leak out of here. It's unbelievable. All right, this is from the no-toes. All right, look carefully at this. This is the strap, and this is the heel bone. That strap ran right up to a bone that sat in this cradle, and that's where the tendon ran. That's the tendon strap. I showed you this in the anatomical. You see this little thing with a little thing with a hole in it? You see that thing with a little thing with a hole in it and a spring coming around? And it attaches to that thing with a hole in it and the thing coming to it? Now, what is this all about? That's the foot. There was no toes like our normal toes. This is a spring, and what will happen is you push up on this, it twists. When it twists, this part pulls this way, which pulls that spring this way, which pulls this in against this cavity. It anchors back up in here somewhere. Comes around here. So this pulls up, that has to pull this in, which makes a spring action here. This comes in as a spring action here. So you have a double spring action. When you come back down, they just automatically reload. This is a bumper. This is what I believe this is called gummite. And it's just like a bumper. As this comes up, it bumps against here. And this comes up, it bumps against here. You know, between the two of them, they sort of pad the interaction of these. They look like almost like metal. I don't know, but you can see the little dots all the way around. Little dots, and these little latches. I don't know. I just don't know. It looks to me like it was biologically designed, because it's 100% biology. I can tell you that right now. I don't think anybody built this and then put foam in here and locked this in and screwed this in. No, I think this was somehow a biologically oriented creature that I just don't know anymore. I tell you, every day is another day. But Tish has a lot of this stuff. Somebody should be looking into and helping these people that are just doing this on their own. And you hear what you get from academia. They don't want to hear a single word about it. And if they do, all they want to do is, well, you're not peer reviewed, and you don't have this, and you don't have that, and you didn't calculate this out, and you didn't take the, and just get lost, stay away from us. Well, what I get from them, they call me a tinfoil hat guy. They call me all kinds of things. You're a flat earther. I don't believe the earth is flat. Obviously it's not flat. It's very, very difficult to be in a position of having evidence for years and years and years. Because this goes back, I wrote that book about Velikovsky 5 years after I started, at least, because I met so much opposition. And I figured when people see this facts, everything's going to be good. No. They can crush you no matter what facts you have. Now, Brian, I think, has gone past that threshold because he has done so much evidence, and I do too. So I should be, but I can't be seen. He's starting to get seen, and he's amongst a group of people that are leaders in this area. I am just a guy in the woods. Nobody really talks to me at all. None of these guys do, because I'm a little over the top. But I'm not over the top. I'm just at the top. I'm just where you should be. I'm at the place where we should all be looking at. Instead of hiding down here and saying, no, look up there, no, the guy's crazy. Well, I can understand the concern and how you look to the rest of your friends, but I'm going to tell you what, in the end of the day, I am going to look better than any of you guys. Because I've been talking about this for years, and I don't care. If people want to assault me, well, there's nothing I can do about that. But I can still keep telling the truth, and exactly what I intend to do. Okay, my friends, for not one single institution to pay any attention to this after having the evidence that I have just shown you, DNA and CAT scans, I don't know if I showed you CAT scans, but trust me, I have them. The DNA, the whole 9 yards, you can't miss it. Anatomy is verified. The nucleophilic substitution, I've done that. It's very simple. It's totally understood now. And to not allow this to be shown in schools is a fiduciary failure by the institutions. Absolute. There's words I could say, but I won't. Anyway, you think of what they are. Okay, my friends, I am going to be going through Velikovsky again later in another video because he needs to be seen as the hero he was. He was destroyed, and 70 years ago he wrote the book Worlds in Collision, which detailed our history. And I was destroyed myself, and I wrote Minds in Collision because that's what it is now. They cannot accept reality, and these are the people that are being paid that we have to say what they tell us to say to be considered educated. And they run away from reality. Not accepted. Cannot stand. All right, so here we go. Let's see what Brian has to say. This is Brian Forrester, an amazing new documentary about the lost ancient civilizations from the producers of BAM. Now, let's find out what Brian's got to say. And again, I give him the most respect, and he's asking the questions that nobody else is doing. He's a pioneer in this. I mean, he has been for years and years. And, he's the guy that really has done the most work that I can see. And that's why I sort of stalking him. No, I'm not stalking you, Brian. I just find you to be the most credible guy on the street. And you're showing the things that I can sink my teeth into and say, I think I can answer these questions, and I'd love to have some dialogue with you guys. I know you and all the rest of you got a lot of friends in this that are, kind of big shots. I'm just sort of a fringe guy, but I think my stuff holds water pretty good. All right, so here goes. Let's see what we have to say about our past.
Follow the progress of that civilization over 3,000 years.
All right, first of all, before I get into this, I just want you to know it's Hidden Inca Tours. It's Brian Forrester. And again, he takes people all over the world and introduces them to things that nobody else will talk about. And sets their minds to wondering, and he certainly has to mine. Now, I just want to make a statement here. I have not watched this yet, so I'm going to probably cut in here and there and make a statement. They say, was there other cultures before us? Well, that is absolutely clear. However, the size of them and were they monsters and so forth, that's not so clear to most people. It's extremely clear to me now, and it should be to you, hopefully, if you saw what I showed you earlier in the video. They're gigantic creatures, no questions whatsoever. And the things that were built from those creatures' bodies. It's just a fact. Even Petra, if you look at it, if you go inside the treasury, well, let me just show you Petra so that I can back myself up. One more piece of evidence. Hold on. All right, look at this right now. You see that? These are sarcomeres. They have these dark and then they have these white little strippy lines. This is muscle tissue sarcomeres. You see that? Those are sarcomeres. You see the block right there? That's how they block. They're made in blocks. They cut right down the block. You can see these are sarcomere blocks. This is the side that it was. How they do it? They do this. They do that to pull. That's a muscle. And this is all wet flesh. Was from fleshy flesh. And this is Petra. And they carved it right into the side of this flesh wall. Inside the treasury, you'll see the actual flesh. Now, I don't have to tell you what flesh looks like. You take a steak out and look at it. That's it. And this is actually blood leaking out of some vessels up here. Now, this is what it is. I cannot account for it other than what was written in the ancient texts. When you talk about Ovid and Hesiod and Herodotus and Plato and Homer and all of them, they say have the same basic stories. Hesiod is the one you want to read. He's the guy that talked to the daughters of Zeus, the Muses, and they told him what to write, and he wrote the Theogony and a bunch of other stuff. All right, so now back to Brian's video. Now, I do this under the Fair Use Act because I need to be able to respond to what other people are saying. So I'm not trying to steal anything from Brian. I'm just trying to make responses to what they think happened. Now, he's talking about Herodotus, and Herodotus actually put Atlantis as the eye of the Sahara. It's on his map from when he lived 500 BC or whenever it was. Now, here we go. This is Brian's video again. Let's open it back up here. Brian Forrester, Hidden Inca Tours. He looks like he does a fabulous job. I've never been on one of his tours, but they sure look like they're enjoyable. So here goes. See, they're questioning these stories.
Take his place.
Now, there's something about these limestone blocks. You're going to have a hard time believing it, but I think they may be actually from dragon scales. All right, because there's dragons all over the earth, and this is what a dragon scale looks like. And it has, if you can see all of these little tiny lines in there, you may not be able to see those, but they come out like these little blocks. And I'll show you some very deep details about that. Now, I can't explain a lot of this, and they might have done some chiseling and done all kinds of things on the outside edges, because there was probably metals on the surface of these scales, I would think. But then they covered them over with actually ground up body parts. I'm not kidding you. And Brian showed this. He didn't realize what he was showing, and they sort of laughed at me for pointing it out, but you can see it. It looks just like Spam. And I showed this in my counter. I have a counter in my house that I can only find one piece of metal in the whole counter, and it's ground up body parts. There's no question about it. It's very, very obvious. So let's see. Let's keep going and see what Brian has to say here. But I know I'm making outrageous statements, but I'm not. I don't think they're that outrageous when you start to break it down. All right, I say they built them down. Now, either they built them from dragon scales, which you see all the little lines in there. All of those are these blocks, and they're actually, this tissue like this is not just little flat slabs of tissue. I don't know if you can see those little lines or not, but they're not just slabs of tissue. Let me show you what I think they are. All right, I am not saying that necessarily these are what the pyramids are made of, but I can tell you what, this is biology, and it is very similar to what we see in a lot of places. And you can see they're flat, and they run flat straight across, and they're blocks. Now, I'm not saying that's what it is, but I'm not saying it isn't what it is either. We could test this and look at it and figure it out, because you see the different colors here? Those are actually different layers of tissue. You're not built like one big chunk of everything's the same. No, there's all kinds of variation that runs through your, skeletal and through your tendons, and through the way your loose connective tissue attaches, and then different layers of mineralization. There's a lot to this, and I've gone through a lot of it, and I pretty well understand it. But if you can see this, what happened at the Great Pyramid was, on the very edges, on the outside, they used crete. And crete is nothing more than concrete, only I'm going to show you what I believe the crete they used was. All right, it shows in the ancient Chinese carvings people grinding other people up to use as building materials, and that's what they did. And it's just like Spam. Now you got a red one here, and you got a gray one here. This had vein blood used, and this had artery blood to do this. This was a fleshy area, and this was an area where there was not a lot of red blood. And that happens on both sides of your body, because you got artery and you got veins. And so anyway, these were the facing stones that made the pyramids nice and flat and smooth, which they stole almost all of them off of there. But there's some on the bottom that were still there that you could see were uneven. They weren't cut. On the inside, they were all, but they filled them in just like concrete. It wasn't a perfectly smooth inside layer. It was filled and all cracked inside. So when they put that in, they didn't carve it all cracked in so that it fit. I wish I had that shot to show you, but it was no question that these things were poured in place. They call them geopolymers, whatever, and they were just body parts. Now let me show you what my counter looks like, and I'll tell you why. I can tell you it's a body ground up. All right, this is the countertop, and there's a good amount of countertop in here, and that is basically the only piece of metal I could find in the whole countertop. Well, I didn't look everywhere, but look at this. That is tendon. That's little chunks of tendon ground up. They don't come in your body like that, or in rocks of any sort like that. That is metal still attached to some blood. The blood is the black and the brown and the red. And these little clear-looking spots most likely were from bone. Bone didn't do good in the Great Flood because it was invaded by salts. Once the salts invade, plant tissues did not do well. They just broke down easily in the salts compared to, when you salt foods, it preserves them, and it's just the opposite in wood. But you can see there are all these chunks of tendon all over. So in my opinion, what they did was they ground all this stuff up, And then they washed it with some kind of chemistry to pull out the metals, because there's just no metals in it. And there should be a ton of metals in here. There should be all kinds of metals in there. And there's just none. So then they just used it for whatever they used it for, whether it was building materials or whether they just dropped it in chunks and left it there after they extracted the metals. I don't know, but I think that's what they did, is extract metals from this. But it makes a perfect building material, there is it. But it's all chunks of tendon. These are little bits of, veins and vein blood, which is black. The red and the brown is what happens to artery blood when it's exposed. We've got a lot of thinking to do, and these are the kind of things that Brian's looking at, asking questions. I wonder how this happened. Well, there it is. All right, I showed you the dragon scale. This is probably the best way to see all of these different, you see all these little different tiny little layers, and that's all they are, layer after layer after layer. Well, that ends up making the whole dragon scale. And that is a dragon scale. And this is the latch that holds it into the next one. All right, and that is actually where the blood supply is. And then there's another little place down here where it ran out at the bottom. See the red blood right there? Everything has to be serviced with blood. So, because that's, any biology has to be kept serviced. And I've looked at this in a microscope. That's where the blood was, right there. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but I can. And when in the microscope, you can see it real well, and you can see all the little stripes. And that's the other one where it attached to the next one down. It's very hard to see, but it's there. And then this is right here. This is literally glue. It's like a little gluey spot. They would have glued that one to the next one down below it, and then they lock in a little tab. And isn't that cool? So I think that's what they made have to use these for, done with this. I mean, who's to say? Because I've seen the pictures inside the Great Pyramids, or all the pyramids, not all of them, but I've seen pictures inside them, and there's biology inside, just like it's inside of Petra. If they look very carefully at this, which I have, because like I say, I don't have to go there to see what they're seeing. I understand the biology, I understand the chemistry, I understand the colors, and it's very simple now to make a determination from afar. For me it is, but somebody on site could actually take samples or do whatever they want. You know what, I think I'm just going to let you guys watch this yourself. I think I've shown what I want to present, and I'll let Brian present his stuff. You should go up and watch it, and I'm hoping we can engage in discussion amongst all the experts, because he's talking about Graham Hancock and all kinds of people that have written books about these kind of things. And I think I have something to contribute, but it's outside the box, so far outside the box. Like I said, I sent to Brian, I said, I know I'm so far outside the box, you guys think I'm crazy, but it's all supported. Well, I didn't ever hear back from him about that, but it's all supported. I can't, if you didn't see what I showed you and you can't see the validity there, or you can't see any reason to investigate it a little deeper, then you're just not a scientist. You just have no scientific interest whatsoever. You just have an agenda to fulfill, and that's it. And I don't mean that against you, Brian, or anybody in specific, but I know that it's a big nut to crack, and if you don't crack it, you know, you're just walking around in circles. That's the bottom line. So I'm going to dig in deeper, and I'm going to keep commenting on Brian's videos and so forth. I'm going to see what he has to say in this one, and I'm sure I'll have something to say. If I just shut up, none of this would have come to light, to be honest with you. None of the stuff I'm talking about, and it's still not in the light of day. And it's still being denied and dismissed and crushed, and I've been demeaned in every single way you can possibly be, and suppressed as much as anybody's ever been suppressed. But now it's starting to come around to where the tide has turned and is on the outflow. And, you know, I'm hoping they'll go out with it, because this suppression just can't continue. You know, this is more than just a curiosity. Right, this is our honest, true history, and this has really got to do with an eternity, possibly. The Greeks talked about all this stuff in very, very, very deep detail, and the historical documentation of Velikovsky was just phenomenal. So I'm going to leave it at that, but Velikovsky is the guy to look into, and you should get my book. It's free as far as I know. As they say, 99 cents, but I guess we could probably afford that. And it's called Minds, well, hold on. Wow, I didn't write that. Mudfossil and Velikovsky, Minds in Collision. That I did write, but this I didn't write. Roger Spur's astounding discovery that geology is actually biology has the potential to change many industries, minds, and lives. Yes, it does. Everything changes, 100%. So it's not, like I say, I think it's 99 cents. Yeah, 99 cents. I never made any money. I didn't want any money. I just wanted to be understood that Velikovsky was not a crazy guy. He was the guy that somebody should pay attention to, or at least look into what he had to say rather than just dismiss it out of hand. And that's what happened. I'm sure if anybody looked at this with a critical scientific eye, what he presents and what my evidence supports makes it absolutely conclusive that the things that were written have at least some substance. And I think a great deal of substance that goes so far beyond the ability for the human mind to accept it, that it's been destroyed and put on the shelf and pushed away, because it encroaches on the credentials of the authorities, basically. And that's in every single walk of life now. Society is collapsing because of totalitarianism in every single regime. It's not totalitarianism from the top, you know, everybody does what I say and everybody wears the same pair of shoes and the same hats. Well, no. It's everybody that is a leader in a specific thing where they say he's the guy to follow. Well, no, they have an agenda at that point, and that agenda does not change whatsoever with any evidence. That's what I've found, and I mean across the board. It doesn't matter who they are, if they're in academia or they're in the same sort of stuff I do. Now, I like to look at the evidence and present evidence and not just make up little guesses and things. So this is where I'm coming from. If anybody can approach me with evidence that overrides my evidence, I'd certainly love to talk about it. Now, I don't know all of the details of some of the early texts and so forth. I got a lot of it. I've read most of it that I can find that I think has merit, because I look for the early guys. And Herodotus was fabulous. And some of the early maps, absolutely amazing what they have on them. Because they knew the whole world. They knew everything. And they knew more than we know. And we've lost it all in the age of enlightenment, where we just said, oh, these people are all just crazy people. Just forget all that stuff. We're going to tell you what you have to think to become educated. And then we're going to make you pay us to tell you. And then if you don't say what we tell you to say, we'll fail you and ruin your life. How's that? And if you bring somebody forth that says, talk about Roger stuff, no, he's not peer reviewed. Say, well, why don't you peer review him? Because he's an idiot. Well, why do you say he's an idiot? Because that's what we say. We're the peer reviewers, and we're not going to review him because he's an idiot. The case is closed. Well, I reopened the case. I'm not closing the case ever. I'm looking for reality. That's all I'm looking for. I don't care. I'm not looking for any money. I'm not looking for any accolades or any plaques or anything. I'm just looking to get reality out to the masses so they can make their own decision about what is real and what isn't real. And because that plays a big part in a person's outlook on life and what, even their afterlife. Because this absolutely 100%, no question whatsoever, plays into that deeply. If all these things were written in the past have some validity, and possibly a lot of validity, which is my contention, I think it's pretty important that everybody is exposed to this, not just a few fringe crazy people. Everybody should see this and then make up the decision. Not just be told, don't look at this, Roger's a crazy guy, forget about him, he's insane. And basically that's what I get, and I get this every day. I mean every single day. And I'm done with it. I just block these people now. They're done. Have a nice day. See ya. Bye. Why should I put up with that? I've did 10 years. And then they're laughing at me and saying I don't have the evidence. I'm showing every bit of evidence anybody could possibly provide. And it's totally rejected, and I'm done being demeaned by people with no evidence to support their demeaning. Demean me, that's fine, I don't care. You can call me anything you want, as long as you say, here's why I'm calling you that, and here's the reason, and here, not just that somebody told you that this is a basalt, and this is an igneous rock, and this is a sedimentary rock. No, you go against my evidence. I know your evidence, it's wrong. You go against my evidence. I don't have to go against your evidence and say, oh, you have to look at this as a piece of meat. No, you look at the piece of meat that I show you that was a rock, and then you tell me why it isn't from a piece of meat. I could prove it is. I have the DNA, I have the CAT scans, I have the specimens, I have the anatomists, I have the chemistry, I recreated the process. You come to me. Gabish? It's time this ends. The case has got to be closed. Velikowski is rolling in his grave right now. I'm sure he's thinking, Roger, keep it up, buddy. Just slap him, man. Don't you worry, Emmanuel. I'm on the case, buddy. I love you. You'll never be forgotten, my friend.